Do you know the greatest commandment ever for a follower of Christ? Do you know what is a commandment a Christian need to follow? Let's look into it. I'm going to read from Matthew chapter 22 from verses 34 to 40. But when the Pharisees had heard that he had put the Sadducees to silence, they were gathered together. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him, saying, Master, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love thy Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. And the second is like unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. It's well explained. But now let's look into the first commandment. What does thou shalt love thy Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind means? What does it mean to love God? To love God is to put God first. What does it mean when I say to put God first? To put God first is just have God alone in our mind and not let any of the worldly things crowd into our mind. We always say with our mind, we always say with our heart, we always say with our mouth, saying that I put God first. God is my everything. But then we have so many thoughts in our mind about our dreams, about our goals, about what we want to do in life, about status and the competition. You know, Satan is so cunning. He makes us think that all the other things, all the worldly things are so important. And he makes us so busy trying to run for it. We live in a world of competition, whether we like it or not. It's all about status. It's all about who's better. He's better. He has this. He has that. He has bought his own house. He has his own car. And he's doing this kind of job, that. And we always compete against each other. And we run our lives trying to catch all these things which the world thinks is more important. And Satan is so cunning that he'll make us so busy making us run behind it. And if we love God first, we'll put him first, and these thoughts will not crowd into our mind. To put God is to throw all the worldly things away, to set aside everything and keep God in our mind and think about him and think about the world after this. This world is nothing but it'll pass away so fast. I would like to read a verse from the book of 1 John chapter 2 and verses 15. It says, Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone who loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. It's so clear. If we let the worldly things crowd into our mind, then the verse clearly says that the love of the Father is not in us. So to put God first is push all these things, the status, what we want, our goals and everything aside. And all these things automatically come. That's a verse in the Bible that says, Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. So what we need to do, we just need to seek God and only God with all our mind and soul. Not just saying that God, I love God, God is my favorite, he's my everything. And then the next second all we think is, oh, we need to do this in life, we need to become that in life and this in life. That means we don't have the love of Father in us. We have let the worldly thoughts crowd into our mind. The second point I'd like to say is, if you love God, we try to become like him. If you look at our kids. If you have kids, if they love their parents so much, they act like their dad, they act like their mom, they want to become like that. If you ask your kids who's your superhero, they would definitely say mommy and daddy. Because for them, we are the entire world. The same way, if we love God, we try to become like him in each and every way. How he has behaved in life and how he has behaved how he was living a life in this world. We try to copy that and we try to become like him. If you look in the New Testament, Jesus, when he was in this world, he was so humble. He was the Son of God. He could have chosen where he wanted to be born, but he didn't. He chose to be born in a humble place, in a humble family. He led a humble life. In the New Testament, we also read that Jesus washed the feet of the disciples. What does washing the feet of disciples mean? You know, back in those days, there were no transportation, no cars or anything. So people, if you invite guests over to a house, you know, the guest has to take a donkey if they have the money, or they have to walk miles together to get to your house. And when it rains, and there were no proper roads like how we have today, and the road would get slushy, and so much of mud would get stuck up on your feet. And when you get into a guest house, it's customary for the guest or the host to call the servants and tell them to wash the feet of the guests. So it's the job of a servant, and the guests have to sit in a chair, and then the slaves or the servant would come and wash the feet, and then they go have dinner or lunch together. You know what? Who took up that role? Jesus. He went and washed the feet of disciples, and he said, go and do likewise. He doesn't mean go and wash your feet. He said, go and be so humble. That's what he meant. He's the Son of God. And he, for a meager mortal, he went and washed the feet. How humble he has been. If you want to know more about how to be humble, I've made a video about humbleness, and I'll put the link in the description. You can watch it. If we're going to say we love God, we have to be humble like him. We cannot be so egoistic, and we cannot be so proud and say, I love God. Both doesn't match at all. Either you love God or you don't love God. You love God, you be humble and not so egoistic and so simple in life. Finally, to love God is to obey him. We can say, I love God and not do what he says, then that is not loving God at all. If you love someone so much, you'll obey them. If you love God, definitely we should obey what he commands. I would like to read a verse from the book John 14, verse 21. It says, whoever has my commandments and keeps them is the one who loves me. The one who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and reveal myself to him. So it's very clear. And also in John 14, verses 15, it says, Jesus tells us, if you love me, you will obey what I command. So if we don't obey what God commands, then we don't love him. It doesn't matter if you say, I love God, he's my everything, he's my all, and I'm a follower of him, and this and that. But if you don't obey what he has commanded, and then we don't love him at all. We need to be very careful about that. If you love him, you have to obey his commandments, be humble like him, and put him first in everything. And let's see what is the next commandment he has said. The second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. It's verse 39. Who is the neighbor? If you read through Luke 10 from verse 29 to 37. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? The Pharisees are asking. In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. When he was attacked by robbers, they stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite. And when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for all the extra expenses you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. So what does a neighbor mean? A neighbor is not someone who just lives around a house. A neighbor is someone who just we come across in our life, in our day-to-day life. It could be like traveling to work or traveling somewhere. You see someone crossing us, he's a neighbor. The Samaritan doesn't know the guy who was injured on the road. He was just passing by and he saw someone who was injured, and immediately he took pity on him and he did what he has to do. Because he knows if the Samaritan was hurt and he was lying on the road, he would have needed help as well. He would have expected someone to come and help him. That's what he did to the other guy who he didn't even know. They were just crossing paths. So the second commandment is love thy neighbor as thyself. So we have to follow that. I'd like to read from Matthew 7 verse 12. So in everything do to others what you would have done to them. For this sums up the law and the prophet. This is so clear, isn't it? We have to do what we want others to do to us. You want others to talk so well to you. If you want others to respect you, if you want others to treat you with honor, do the same to them. Only then that means you love the neighbor. You can't expect others to do everything for you, but you don't give it back. That's not the love of God. That's not what the second commandment says. It clearly says, do to others what you expect them to do to you. We need to be very careful about that. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy, but we have to try and do it if we love God. And if we love God, we have to follow His commandments. One more verse I would like to read. I'm sorry, I ran out of battery, so I had to head back home and continue the video. So the verse I'm going to read is from the book of John, chapter 13 and verse 34. A new commandment I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. This verse is so clear. It clearly says, love one another as I have loved you. So God is saying, you should also love one another as I have loved you. It's so important because God has loved us. Imagine how many flaws we have, how many things so bad in us we have. We should often think about even our bad things which we have. In spite of all the weaknesses and all the bad things we have, God still loves us. That means we also have to forget all the flaws in the other person. So this would help us to see through that and love them with the love of Christ. That's what God is saying us. If you compare between these two commandments in the New Testament with the Old Testament 10 commandments, everything fits together. If you follow the two commandments in the New Testament, then you follow everything. And that's why the verse says in Matthew 22, the last verse, verses 40, on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So if we follow the two commandments in the New Testament, we follow everything. One last verse I would like to read is from Matthew chapter 7, verses 21 through 23. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. Jesus has said that in New Testament. Imagine being in that situation where Jesus is going to say, I don't even know you. Get away from me. Why? Why would he say that? We can preach all we want. We can teach all we want. And we can claim to be the closest follower of Christ. Or you can say that I'm keenly following the Bible, doing this, doing that. You can sit in church 24 hours. Doesn't matter. If you don't follow the commandments, we have no partake with God. He has clearly said, if you obey me, you'll follow my commandments. So how crucial it is. Think about it. the two greatest commandments. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. This is the first and the great commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these commandments, on these two commandments, hang all the law and the prophets. As a follower of Christ, if we don't follow that, and then we are lost somewhere. So this time we have to think to ourselves. We should take time to understand, are we failing in something? Are we missing out something? Are we missing out? Are we simply saying that we love God through our words? Because God clearly said in that verse, if you love me, obey my commandments. So please take your time, and we all should take our time to understand how to please God and how to be like Him. That's more important. And I hope these two commandments would get engraved in our hearts, and we should follow that all through our life if we are a true follower of Christ. Thank you for watching. If you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, please like and subscribe, and you can also find me on social media. You just have to search for Frank About Truth. Keep sharing this video. You never know, it could touch someone. Thank you very much. Bye.